Okay, right, people. Start off with the leadership team. I think I've covered most of this, but you've got to have those guys on board. If you don't, you're not going to work, and they need to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Okay, and the secret with these guys, the busy people. So don't give them 10-page reports. They'll never read it, right? Lots of snappy little bits of information is what you want to do. Snappy good news stories if you can. Keep them updated. Let them aware. Again, let the CEOs know there are problems. In an organisation, the queue the CEO was longer than the queue the HR in one of my implementations. Fortunately, he was brought into it. He actually brought me in the organisation to implement Scaled Agile. So that helped a lot. He didn't quite know what he brought me in to do, which was a different problem, but it did help. But I can't emphasize, keep these people informed. I'm terrible at that. I don't like, blow my own trumpet, but you've got to, okay? Every time you have a little win, let these people know. Keep them engaged, keep them hooked, okay? Douglas Adams, brilliant author, fantastic guy. He said nothing travels faster than light, with the possible exception of bad news, right? So if something goes wrong, you need to get in there quick and let senior management know. Now, one of the key parts of Agile, let alone Scrum Agile, is all about being transparent and being honest, right? But what they miss out on is transparent, honest, and fast, right? If you're the person giving the bad news, you can explain it and frame it properly. If they hear it from someone else, then it won't be framed, and they've already got that mindset that there are problems. You're going to hit lots of problems with Agile development delivery. Scaled Agile is hard. Things won't work. So you need to let them know and be fast with that. Architects. Who here has architects in their organisation? Brilliant people. Bigger egos than even me. That takes them doing. They have a fantastic use in an organisation. Most Agile frameworks do not have architects. But you need architects. And I'm going to go totally against the Agile way of thinking. This concept of evolving architecture doesn't work, in my opinion. It's my opinion. Right? People out there can do it. If you've got a large and complex system, it normally has key non-functional things it's got to hit: performance, scalability, even down to what open source licenses you want to use and you don't want to use, and needs an interface. Architects are key. So you just need to say, where does the architect fit into the pattern? And I see it's all part of the product refinement and that high level view. Architects, keep them high level. They need to be understanding the technology and the strategies and key designs, and maybe even down to, right, these are design patterns you want to use. But do not get them involved in stories, right? The teams need involved in the story, the squads, and therefore keep them, your three amigos, it can be quite crowded by the time you get there. But that backlog refinement, they should be on there. Definition of ready should have the architect saying, yes, I understand how this change is going to fit into this. Brilliant. Architects, great guys, don't fit in Agile models, but you need them. So just think, how are you going to use them? And again, sick of repeating myself, bring them in and let them know that they've got a role. What you don't want is them become bottlenecks. I've seen that in so many Agile teams. Why are none of the tickets done this sprint? Well, they're all waiting for the architect. Where's the architect? Oh, he's on holiday. So what, we stop work for 2 weeks? So you can't have architects signing off on stories. Stories are functionality, the product owner signs off on those. So bring them in earlier on. Okay, UX designers. Again, lots of organizations have UX designers. It's not a role that normally sits in there. You can't have a UX designer in a squad because, hey, you can't be designing something that the guys are meant to be developing, because therefore it's not ready for development, is it? Therefore, like architects, useful guys, bring them early on in there, get them to create the wireframes or whatever they need to do, get them to focus on the user journey not individual components and exactly where a button should appear on a screen. Okay, give the Scrum squads a certain level of independence on design and what it should look like. UX guys can be identifying the journey, identifying frameworks and guidelines and stuff like that, but don't get them involved in individual tickets. Otherwise, exactly the same thing as the architects, it all boils down. And I've had projects virtually come to a stop because the UX guy wanted a curved box frame around things, and the development team was saying this particular application that it's got square ones, that's what we're going to do. And we're getting blows over it.
With both of those, in the architects and UX design,
yeah.
the flip side is that they end up being like this ivory tower, so that they're casting their designs from on high. How do you kind of find the middle ground where they're involved?
So that's a very good one, and things I've done in the past myself, it's not any slides there, but it's a very, very good question. So things I've done is, right, so if you are actually working in an office, in the days that we all actually worked in an office, plonk the architect in with the rest of the squads and stuff, so he's there, he's available. Secondly, he's about feeding information to these guys. Now, the problem with, say, your senior developers and your architect is they've probably got different opinions, and they're probably quite strong egos, and in software development, there ain't a right or a wrong. There's just different ways of doing things. So you need to just say, okay, right, draw the line. Is this a high-level architectural thing? Yes, get the architect to explain, and he can give presentations about what he's doing. Bring him along to the Scrum planning, and he can talk to the guys. And this ticket, the reason it's got this architecture change is because of X. And the team, if they're not happy, can always reject the ticket. Right? They can say, no, that story, we're not happy with it, it's not ready for us to accept. It does occasionally happen, and then the architect and the lead developer go off into a corner and fight. Okay, it is a problem. People with egos is an issue, but there are some very, very talented people who are architects and UX designers, and if you can manage them right, they will actually add so much value to a product. But you're right, you don't, if they're sat in an ivory tower and the developers don't understand the decisions they're making, then they're not going to implement it. And that will cause friction. So you've got to bring them from down that tower, talk to them, get them to explain. But they have, and this is the important thing, they have the overriding, they're accountable for the architecture, therefore they're the ones who have the final say. And if the team don't like it, at the end of the day, it's a bit of tough. And you've got to explain that to the team. There are things that the team can do that the architect can't do. Right, another interesting one, business analysts. I've got lots of organisations that have business analysts. The reason you've got business analysts is because you haven't got enough product owners and they're not actually given the right role. There we go, simple. Lovely people. Most organisations I know, the business analysts don't know, and they're not subject matter experts. They can't be product owners, right? Until you're a subject matter expert, how can you actually own a product and drive a product? But there's a lot of work that business analysts are fantastic at doing, getting requirements, getting understanding from the customers, explaining those requirements to technical teams, even some of the work like writing the stories and getting the stories into a decent shape. So BAs are useful, but again, they shouldn't sit within the squads. They should sit outside before it goes into working on that product refinement. In an ideal world, you wouldn't have BAs, you'd only have product owners. We don't live anywhere near an ideal world. So, use them for what they're good at. Okay. Delivery squads, right. 2 types of people on this squad that you need to look out for. The first one is the evangelist. Now you would think, well, we're implementing Agile. What's wrong with having evangelists in your squad? They will tell you exactly what you're doing wrong all the time. Now, it's the squad's process, so I'm quite happy for that. I don't have all the answers. But you need to be flexible. You can't get a perfect solution, off-the-shelf solution and fit in an organization. We're all different. Okay? So it's very important that you work on those Angelists, because otherwise they're going to just basically tell everyone, they're in the queue for the CEO as well, and HR saying John doesn't know what he's doing. But it's because they want everything by the book. So work with them and explain with them. They're great. If you can get them to be flexible, then they're absolute superstars to have. But you've got to make sure they've got that flexibility. And it's normally, I'm going to laugh because one of our guys has just come off a course, but it's normally just as they come off a course, they've been told that, we've all been on the Scrum courses, you do not deviate from the Scrum guidelines. That's exactly how you do it and never ever move. Well, I'm sorry, we're not Californian. They're software houses that are, we have other problems, and you have to blend what you're doing basically to get it to work. Okay, the other problem is those, and I'm going to call them traditionalists. I get told off if I call them Luddites. So you never heard me say that, okay? They're traditionalists. They're the people that this is how we do things. We've done it here for years. Yes, but they've brought me in because it's no longer working. And you need to try and convince those people to change. They are normally, and can be, passionate about the product, passionate about the company, lovely people, exceptionally intelligent, and not willing to move an iota. A story I can tell you is I joined a company, and the lead BA, part of my job was to introduce Agile. Lead BA was writing 300-page specs. And I said, well, I'm not going to read that. And that caused quite a bit of an argument. I said, look, if you get it down to 50 pages, you've got a chance I might read it. But 300 pages, I said, so have the customer signed it off? No. Why do you think that is? He refused point blankly to break the specs down. So, I'd done non-agile things like, okay, let's have a requirements catalog, at least try and break it up. No, we're not having any of that stuff. So even trying to do some non-agile best practice wasn't working with this guy. He also implemented a rule that none of the other BAs were allowed to talk to customers because he knew. So why do you need to talk to a customer? Because he knows everything. We came to an agreement, and he left the company. Within a day of him going, who's he? Morale rocketed. The BA started talking to customers. We started getting a more agile approach. Specs got a lot smaller and got signed off. So it's important that you identify those people. If you can bring them along on the journey, brilliant. But sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And they can be, as I say, this guy was so pro the company, you chopped his head off. It was written through his neck. But he was the wrong person for the company, now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he was the right person. And it's a hard thing to do, right? And also, you've got to think what impact that has on the rest of the people in the organization. They're losing an old friend or an old enemy. So it can have positive or negative, but you've got to be careful how you do that. And obviously, it's last resort, but it does happen. And I've had to get rid of people occasionally, okay? If you can avoid it, brilliant, because people are great. Okay, it's the business transformation model. I'm going to very quickly go, because I'm starting to overrun. I apologise. Very quickly, it's a business transformation model project. Treat it as it. You need a team. You need a plan. It can be an agile plan, but you need a plan. You need to make sure you've got the proper resources there. You need a proper business case. What you're trying to achieve, right? You need, I'm going to say something that some agile people get framed. You need KPIs. How are you going to measure that this agile project has actually had any benefit? If you can't do that, why should the CEO sign it off? Right? So you've got to have something that you can measure. Ideally, measure performance now. You implement this solution, and then performance becomes brilliant. Okay? I can go into any organization, by the way, and increase the amount of story points your teams get through within a week. So be careful what KPIs you're talking about. They can be absolutely pointless. But, bugs found after release and things like that are good KPIs. So I say dedicate resources, treat it as a proper project, have your discovery, have your inception, and then obviously you've got delivery phase. Delivery phase can be quite long. It's about changing culture as well. So think about it, and you've got to buy everyone, get them shared in your vision. Don't try to do it by stealth. I have actually the first organisation I tried to go in and do it by stealth. Just, those long releases aren't working. Let's go into iterations. And then slowly but surely I thought, I'm being really clever here. I'm getting them there. But I didn't have any buy-in for it. Whereas if I'd gone, look, this is what the end game is. This is what we're trying to do. It would work a lot better. And, I learnt my lesson. I started telling what the end game was. And most of them came on board. It was good. Again, this is the same basically, key message on this one, language, right? I mentioned release train engineers. My God, what a strange name that is. I don't know who came up with that one. Be very careful the language you're using and let people slowly adapt to it. I had a great CEO many years ago, and we started talking about minimum viable product. And every time he said that, he just looked at me and said, "You're being lazy, John." What do you mean? Well, you're just trying to get away with the least amount of work you can possibly get away with. And no matter what I said, couldn't convince them otherwise. So we just stopped using the phrase MPV. Simple as that, right? We knew what we were developing and delivering. The product owner, product management did, but in front of the CEO and in any documents he saw, you never put minimal viable product or minimal marketable product. We sort of tried that one out on him, and he still didn't quite get it. Yeah. So you try, but sometimes you just, okay, fair enough. Pick your battles, on that one. Pick your hills. Another key thing, don't try and do it all yourself. I say I've gone into smaller organisations and I've tried to do everything by stealth and tried to do it myself, and I'll be doing this scrum mastering, I'll be doing this, and you're just setting yourself up to fail. Get help, get your team trained up. You get people's involvement. It will not succeed unless you get everyone involved. That's number one. And then get them to actually be actively involved and start doing stuff. And don't worry if they don't do it the way you would do it. Hey, I found out years ago that some of my ideas were wrong and or just not the most effective way of doing it. We're talking about empowering teams, so you've got to empower them as part of the implementation of Scaled Agile. Okay. You can't sit there and say, no, you're wrong, by the way we're empowering your teams. Yeah, it doesn't work. Tools, I'm not going to go too much into tools. Automated testing and stuff like that, you do need. The one thing I will say with this is be careful you don't allow the product management office to manage your Jira implementation. Okay? Or if you're using Microsoft DevOps or whatever tool, they will turn a nice, simple, easy, agile tool into the most complex system. You'll have about 20 statuses. You'll have and working systems all over the place and so many subtasks that have to be on every single story. You'll die a death, right? So be careful, because they will try and get it to be as close to a complex waterfall project management tool as they can. That's my only word of advice on that one. You want someone who knows what they're doing to manage and come up with those frameworks, and get the agile teams to come up with what they want. Less statuses, I find, the better. Okay. Right. Some frameworks, very quickly, come up with a wonderful journey. You can follow the journey stage by stage. You've got lots of documentation, lots of expensive consultants. Consultants are good, remember that. But lots of expensive consultants. Great, if that's what you want and it's a complex route and you need a lot of hand-holding, great. Other frameworks are more, you pick the bits that work for you and they're free, you can have a look, have a play. If you want someone to help you, great, there are people who help you. But it's more about organisations, they're all different, pick what you want. Right, and obviously I've put this one down, but there are lots of good frameworks there. I mean, I personally love Nexus, which is great if you're looking at mainly delivery, but once you start going to a wider organisation, Nexus doesn't work so well. So it all depends what you're looking for. Key learning points. Right, it's a business transformation project. you need to get your senior management in. I find that sending them on a one-day course or getting a trainer in and getting the senior management team in to understand agile principles is a really useful thing. Difficult to get it arranged. I mean, they've got, their diaries are difficult, but getting them brought in so they understand the terms, they understand what you're doing, and it's someone external telling them why it's good and not you from an internal point is very useful and helpful. Communicate little and often. People will read a little bit of information, look at a website or whatever. I've had, screens up with information and little flashes coming up. Don't send out War and Peace. People won't read it. Okay. We're all busy. Can't emphasize enough HR. Work with HR. Work with HR, and when that doesn't work with HR, right? You need them. It's all about people. And, if you've got a good HR team, it's fantastic, and they can actually really help you implement it. Try to keep it simple. I'll say Jira tools and things. I like simple. Most developers and people like simple models. We can follow simple a lot better. Don't worry about, you're going to get some stuff that's going to be waterfall. Fine. Don't get hung up about it. There's nothing wrong with waterfall. I have developed lots and lots of software projects, and really successful ones, using waterfall methodology, as most people in this room probably have, So don't get worried about it. Don't do it alone. And the final thing, right? We're on this planet once. Have fun, right? Don't let implementing Agile and Scaled Agile get you down. At the end of the day, it's only work. You should come to work and it should be fun, and then you should go home and have even more fun. That's my philosophy on life. Okay, so questions and answers. And whilst people are asking questions, and did I answer those questions? Sort of. Okay, that's good. But whilst you're doing that, that's a feedback form as well. So, which bit do you think I didn't answer?
I think as you went through the presentation, lots of kind of things alluding to get somebody to come and train the senior management team on Agile and
Yeah.
Agile, but why would you even think about making something complex for Agile if they already weren't on the same page as what it actually was and the benefits of it?
Okay, so I'll say my viewpoint normally, and this is, my view of the world, is I normally come in as a head of development. That's what I've done for most of the last 20 years. I've come in, I've looked at the teams, and I've said, right, what are my biggest business problems? What are the issues that the delivery team aren't meeting the business? And it's normally that they're not turning around stuff quick enough. They're not engaging with people. They're delivering the wrong stuff, which is quite a key one. And quality can be an issue. When you start digging around quality, they're not talking about coding mistakes. They're talking about, well, you've developed this, but we actually want you to do this, something slightly different. Those kind of quality issues. So Agile helps with a lot of those problems. Scaled Agile helps and is the only solution if you've got multiple teams trying to develop the same product. And that is quite common. Now, for instance, if you've got, part of your solution, you've got your mainframe guys working at the back end, you've got some, Delphi or PHP or goodness knows what in the front end. They're interesting technologies, they're different teams, but you need to have the same cadence. You need to get them working, developing together. So you're not going to have a team that has a mainframe developer and a PHP developer and something else in there. It probably isn't going to work. So you've got to accept that your structure is going to have those technical teams. You need a good way to communicate, a good way of getting those teams to work together. So I found I've got a problem. Agile, Scaled Agile is a good solution for that problem. I then need to go to senior management and sell that to them and say, this is the problem, and they all agree with it. Yeah, that's the problem. Right, here's a solution. Yeah, great. This is the consequences and the cost of doing it, and that's normally quite not such a nice conversation, but that's why I do it. Now, if I was in an organisation that said, we've already identified the problem, John, we want Scaled Agile and everyone's up for it, there's still a hell of a lot of work there. But that's a good position to be in. But the reason I focused on, and I say it's my own personal experience, I've either had people ask me to implement Agile and I haven't really known what they're asking for. It's trendy and everyone has to be Agile. It's like lean processes. We ask people about lean, we want lean processes. Do you know what that means? You know what a value chain is? You know, it's understanding the detail, and that's why they bring us in. You know, as IT experts or delivery experts, we know what we're doing around that. It's as simple as that. That's why I've focused a lot on communication and getting buy-in and setting expectations and keeping people engaged. But people are the most important thing about Scaled Agile, right? Without the buy-in of everyone, it ain't going to work. If you haven't got your buy-in from your developers and stuff like that, they'll find ways to trip you up. And people have their own agendas. Doesn't mean someone doesn't like Scaled Agile, doesn't make them a bad person. It's just they've got a different mindset and a different way of looking at things. And you just need to work with them to see what we can do. And I say it's not the answer to everything. Okay. So has everyone had a chance to fill in the form? Brilliant. And 5 to everyone who gives me a good... although it's anonymous, so I shouldn't have said that, because you won't know who's there. But any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry. That's all right. Yeah. Okay. How does this fit in with the old CMMI ways? Because everybody many years ago wanted to do CMMI, all the maturity models.
Yep.
CMMI is still there. It's got different universes, as you probably know.
Yep.
So how do you see that fitting, or more importantly, complementing agile ways of working?
That's a very good question. So how... Again, if you try to implement a framework to the letter, then they're going to bump into each other because they overlap and they've got different ways of doing things. So it's all about looking at your organisation. If something's working well, then you want to keep that. So if your organisation has understood and is driving forward, for instance, how it does requirements, how it's doing its planning, how it's doing its strategy, great. If your organisation has got really good ways of doing testing and has really good software quality, you don't want to throw that out and come up with this new trendy solution. So that is why, and I don't want to sound a little bit like a salesman, but that's why sort of the bad model comes in. It's saying you take the bits that you haven't got and try and work them together. But it does take a bit of thinking.
I'm asking for a reason.
Yeah.
Because one of the areas that I don't see Agile doing, or more importantly, say product management, whatever, is there's an opportunity, possibly, potentially, probably giving me something here that I shouldn't, is to go into a client and say, what is your maturity level with regards to the on-tape of Agile? Let's have a look at you from a discovery point of view and see how mature you are and what are the opportunities here to help you on that journey. And speak to the FCI and think, hey, we've got the batch system here, we can help you from a maturity point of view.
As a consultancy, and I don't want to talk for the directors who know this a lot better than I do, we do exactly that. We don't actually, we've got bad, that's one model. We will help you with lots of models. We are quite happy to go in. I was just talking to one of my colleagues before lunchtime, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's going into an organisation for a couple of days and looking at where they are, how mature they are, and then coming back and saying, okay, this is how mature you are. It could be that's great, they're happy where they are. Probably not, because they've brought in consultancy. So that's sort of giving you a clue that they're not happy with something. And then seeing where they are. But you're right, there are levels of maturity. SAFe does it by having different levels, the 4 levels. But I still think that could be a very over-complex solution. And you've got to look at what you're trying to do. What is the remit? What's your problems? And some organisations don't have a lot of the problems that, say, SAFe would fix. So you haven't got a problem. Great, let's work with and tie in, where are your problems? And use a simple... So I love Agile, as I said earlier on, using waterfall traditional approaches. I've developed all sorts of stuff. I used to be Prince2 certified, right? I will use whatever meets that business's requirement to give value. And I'm not hung up about what we call it. And there are some great models out there. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, my question is a little bit similar. So
Yeah.
I guess disclaimer, I'm probably more of the agile evangelist.
Okay.
Because I did ESF 1 and 2 at the beginning of this year. So
Oh, cool.
have that what you will. Yeah, but like, when do you know when to make those? And I guess this is my opinion. Compromises. That you mentioned, like, don't mess with success, I guess, in a way, if it's already working well. But like, isn't that just admitting that?
No, right.
Improvement?
It's very difficult. All systems can be improved, right?
Yeah.
Even this can be improved, apparently. As my wife tells me, by starting off by losing 3 stone, but yes. So, all systems can be improved, right? That's a good starting point. So, but you want to focus on where you'll get the biggest value for doing a change. And that's the rule. So, yes, you've got a system, it's working. I mean, I hate the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Because we'd still be going around horse and carts. We wouldn't have motor cars. You know, when motor cars first came out, they were slower and noisier and less reliable than horse and cart. But that's how you get progress. But you need to look at what are the key problems, focus on the biggest problems, and then, you know, if you get those resolved, you can then start going down and working on easier or more difficult things, or getting less gain. And that's the way to do it. So, you know, there isn't a hard and fast rule. It's look at your organisation, talk to people, see what, you know, every organisation has a different pain point. If you can solve the immediate pain points, then you get buy-in to do more change. You know, if you turn up and say, by the way, I've changed this process and isn't it wonderful? And everyone goes, used to have a salesman, talking about sales team earlier on, used to have a salesman, and he had a brilliant question that he used to ask me when I was showing him the roadmap and doing my product management. And that question was, so what? And it completely flummoxed you. Here's this wonderful thing, here, this widget does this, and here you go, so what? How's that going to help me sell the system? And if I couldn't answer that, why are we doing it? Was his view. So, you know, different people have different views, but it's going to have a so what. If you're going to do a change, it's got to have a benefit and a value. It gets harder when the value isn't, you know, someone has to change something to give someone else value. That's when you start really having problems. But that's with any business transformation program, you can get that set up. But yeah, it's the other thing is, don't forget, you try something, and if it doesn't make it better, you can always reverse it. Fail fast.